So in order to get ready for our transition effect, what I want to be doing is just applying a custom class to these particular divs right here. And if you remember, I'll just turn off live view for a second. These are just some simple divs. If I come in here and I click on them, you'll see that it is a div inside of the aside section that we've created. So what we want to be doing is creating a transition that is going to be applied only to these divs. So what we're going to need to do is to create a simple class that we can apply to anything that we want to create a transition with. And the simple transition that we are going to create is just to change the background color and perhaps the foreground color of some of the text. However, I don't want to be doing this to all divs necessarily inside of the aside section, because there is a div here that I do not necessarily want to transition. So it's a really simple application, and the way that we can get started with this is by, number one, determining which of these divs are going to be part of that transition. So let's create that simple little class first and foremost. So to begin with, let's go to our CSS styles window, and I'd like you to scroll all the way down to the bottom. Once there, I'll ask you to click on New CSS Rule. And since we haven't really selected anything, we're just going to come to the class area, and we're going to create one with the simple name of transition. Remember that whenever you're creating a custom class, you got to start it with a period. Then we'll click OK. Now, some of the things we want to do with this transition is basically just to define what the background color is going to look like before we actually create the animation. So let's go to our background, and within the background color area, well, perhaps what I'll ask you to do is to just put in the value D5, D5, D5. At the same time, I'm going to ask you to browse for a background image. And if we go to the Chapter 10 files inside Killer App in the Start files, within the Images folder, you'll see BG Trans. So BG Trans, the PNG, is the one that we want to be using. Now, I'm not really concerned in any way, shape, or form about how it repeats. It's going to repeat by tiling on the X and Y, so nothing else I really need to be doing here. Under the Type category, I just want to make sure that the text that we see on the initial viewing is going to be this dark gray. So 333 is just perfect. Other than that, there's really not much I want to be doing to this. So I'm going to click OK. Now, we're not really going to see any of this effect take place until we actually apply that custom class to any number of divs that we want to. So I'm going to select this div. Now, make sure that this is the div that you've selected. Now, there are many ways for us to apply a custom class, and one of them is to select that div, and in the Properties window, I can choose Class and scroll down to where it says Transition. Now, this particular div has a transition class applied to it. Well, if we were to preview this in live view, there's nothing really any different about this class. It looks pretty much the same as it did initially. But what we want to be doing is to now apply the hover state to our CSS3 transition. So let me show you how to do that. Let's go to the window menu and open up CSS Transitions. Now here you're going to be faced with this plus sign to create a new transition. So let's do just that. In the new transition window, I want you to target the rule that we're looking for. Now, the particular rule we are looking for is the one called dot transition. So go to where all of your classes are, and you'll see dot transition. Now we have to determine what's the state that we want this to be activated with. So we want to go to the hover state. So this transition is going to change on hover. Now here, where the duration is set, let's put in something like 0.5 or half a second. I could have said 500 milliseconds, but 0.5 will work as well. I don't want a delay. You don't have to put anything in here, and it'll give us a default value of 0. The timing function, on the other hand, let's choose ease in out, much as we did with our links in the previous video. Now we have to determine which of the properties do we in fact want to change. Well, the first one I want to change, if you click on the plus sign, is background color. And the background color that I'm going to give you is ABC C4B. You can press return or enter, and you'll notice that the background color will in fact be this green. Another thing I want to change, so come to the plus sign, and you can scroll down to where it says color. The color, in other words, the text color that I want to see, is a different value as well. So I'll ask you to enter a value of 2B4 and B02. If you press return, you'll see that that's this dark green. Once that's done, we will create the transition. All right, now you'll see in the CSS transition window that yes, dot transition is the class that we created, has an effect on it on the hover state. And if you open up the hover state, you'll see it's taking the div with the transition class on it. So if you ever wanted to remove a CSS3 transition, just select the transition and press minus. Or if ever you wanted to make adjustments, you could double click these particular elements. So I double clicked the hover state and it opened up the edit transition window. So you could add more transitions or change the speed or anything else. Now if I just close this temporarily, let's take a look. I'm in live view. And when I roll over this, you can see that even this div is set to have a hover state. Now these ones are not. So what I want to be doing is selecting these two and applying the transition to it. And this is easily achieved by any number of different ways. We've seen how you can apply it in the Properties panel. You can also click on this div and you could right click right here on the div tag and say Set Class. And we can say transition. So now that should work. Now if I select this one, the last one, I could even do this in the code view. So let's go to our source code and you'll see here that yes, we have a div with a class transition, but this div does not. So I'm just going to put a space here. I'm going to double click class and we'll scroll down to where it says transition. So now this is something that you could easily apply to any div that you would like. It's as simple as that. So if you come back in the next video, I'm going to show you how to create yet another type of CSS3 transition that's going to be increasing and decreasing the size, the height of one of these divs. And in doing so, you'll be able to achieve an effect that could only have been done with JavaScript in the past, but now we have the ability of doing so with CSS3.